Welcome to the journey. And journeys, well, in my journey, it's been a long, well, not successful, just average. I've not done boast of myself too much, but I know it's fast approaching as this one is recorded, 200 episodes. So get in there. And it's nearly the end of, I don't know if it's going to be the end of season 13 or it's going to be the start of season 14, but episodes are coming in. But anyway, today's journey is featuring a certified coach, speaker, and author, amplifying immigrant voices through a proclaimed podcast, The Immigrant Experience in America, with 170 plus episodes. And it has been voted top 15 American culture podcast with listeners in, and this is me reading it, in, I think it says 50 plus countries. And our guest is also a former US diplomat. And her book, Decoding America, offers a roadmap for immigrant success. Our guest bridges cultural divides through self-exploration and coaching. I will welcome Simone to the journey.
Thank you, David. Such a pleasure to join you.
You're welcome. Now, journeys, even in immigration, is a big journey in so my mind. I've been through that. I know how it is. And trust me, from my experience, I know it's a scary prospect. But obviously, when I was growing up, I was inspired. What was your inspiration when you was growing up?
Okay, so prior to moving to the United States, my inspiration growing up, well, I was a part of a big family. I didn't necessarily think about my life in the US. It was basically playing. We had a lot of free play. And lots of community with lots of neighbors, lots of gatherings, cooking and things like that. I just really was a kid and I think I just wanted to grow up and make my family proud, right? And then came the announcement that, after 12 years plus of my dad waiting for his papers to come, his visa number to come current, that they were now current and that we were going to be moving to the US. And so all of a sudden that, it added another layer to the story. And so my brother and I were always joking about, what we would do when we come here. We're going to open a Jamaican restaurant. We're going to do this, you're going to do that. And so we started dreaming about what life would be like upon arriving here in the US. And so, there began the second phase of my life. 1998 when I left and embarked on my immigrant journey here to the United States.
Yeah, and you know, you said since 98. I've been in America since 2007 years this year, so 2018. And when you go through that experience, you always have that dream, and they say it's the American dream. And I never, for once in my life, and this is how I see it, and you probably felt the same, you never experienced of feeling like I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to be, going to experience something because you're so used to your own roots, your own heritage.
Oh yeah, that's good. That's right. Because you were just asking what was my inspiration growing up. I was so deep into my family setting. Dad, one of 11, mom, one of 12. So there were always a lot of people around, and we were very immersed into our community. And so, we were on a farm, grew up on a farm, lots of animals, donkey, goats, cows, chicken, dogs, farming. And so, we lived from the earth. And so life was organic. It was, lots of play. Our neighbors come to our property, we'll play. And in fact, I don't think we weren't really allowed to go anywhere else. Everybody would come and we had this big space in front of our home and everybody would play and, the parents would just watch and they knew we were safe. So I was so immersed into that. I wasn't really dreaming about life in another country. I didn't know what that concept was like. I mean, I used to see American movies
Mm,
and get exposed to like things from abroad when my grandma would travel or my aunt would come back and and get things. But I was just really a child, just happy playing. It wasn't formalized like play is formal here in the US now. Like you have to do play dates and have swimming classes and all this stuff. That's so interesting to me and can be frustrating at time, right?
yeah.
Because I just grew up where you just get lost in just playing and just being a kid. And so it wasn't really formalized until actually when I moved abroad, then things became just very formal in getting things set up and joining groups and being a part of this organization and so forth. So
Yeah, and you talk about it being so formal. I just remember because I grew up in the, well, late 80s into the 90s because I was born in 83. But when I first moved to where I lived when I was living at home with my mum, everyone could leave their door open and just feel comfortable leaving their door open. And the kids, my generation of kids was always in the street or over the road playing on the green area just with a soccer ball because that's how it was. And like I said, the community was there. Unless you was elderly and the door was shut, fine. But the door was always open. You can knock on the door, shout up the stairs or shout through the door. It's only me. And then as I got older, that changed a lot. And as I was a teenager, I was 16 in year 2000. 16 onwards, it felt like that community feel, if you want to call it community feel, because it was about community. It felt like it wasn't the same anymore. The doors were always shut. You had to knock on the door. Mobile phones, cell phones, whatever you want to call them, were starting to come out, and people were like, call me, text me. Facebook was on the increase. Gone was the sense of community.
so true, so true. I remember the days when we had to wait to see people to have a conversation.
Yeah,
In fact, we didn't have a landline phone. We would just all conversations took place in person. Would visit our home, or we would visit their home, or we would drive and pay visit to somebody. We did a lot of road trips back then. So those were some of the memories I have. And then as the things changed, then there was a land. I moved to the big city for high school, and then there was a landline phone. And so even then, once you're on the road, people just had to wait. They leave a message and you return it when you get home
yeah.
and everything was fine. And today you have cell phones walking away. You have to, and the minute it beeps, everybody's like, you have to respond like right, it's millisecond. So it's really kind of changed our lives. I really love those simple days where there was much more community and family focus. We spent a lot of time together. Not perfectly because we're all humans and issues arise and we resolve them and then we move on, right? That's
Yeah,
just a human dynamic. But I miss those days where things were just organic play that I grew up having. And it breaks my heart at times when I think about the fact that my daughter isn't having that because she's experiencing a completely different world here in the US, always inside, always on some TV or another device. If we want her to be playing with someone, she can't just go outside and play because family isn't close by. We have to make a text message and plan. Let's meet up at the park. Let's go skating. Let's go to this place. Let's go swimming. It's so formal and it just feels so unnatural to
and
me,
the
right?
formality carries on in the fact because many people nowadays, gone is the days of where are you? I know where you are. Let's have this app. I know where you are straight away.
Exactly. People even post it online, what they're doing, their movements, posting on Facebook if they're going on a flight where they're traveling to, which is, there's a lot of security concerns with that. But yeah, life is quite different from the way I grew up. I was very immersed into just being a kid. And in fact, it was when I moved to the US that that naivete that you grew up with as a child actually started um like diminishing, right?
Yeah,
Because I just wasn't aware of like certain complexities of society and human interaction and societal issues. And I was so naive. I'm telling you, when I went off to college the first time, because I was always around safe people, family, friends, we invite neighbors over. There's always like cooking and hanging out, and you felt safe in that bubble. And so once you left that bubble, then the real world comes in and you
yeah,
have to start classifying your relationships about who is an acquaintance and who is a colleague and who's a friend and who makes it into your safe space. And I talk about this whole dynamic of learning whether you're a peach or a coconut. People who are peaches share openly the moment they meet you. People who are coconuts basically are tend to come from collectivist cultures. It takes a while for you to get into their safe space because you have to prove yourself. And people talk about this when they do business abroad, like when Americans do business with other cultures. It takes them a while for them to kind of get into people's space, for them to trust you and start doing business for you.
yeah.
They have to prove themselves on the relational level before people will even do business with you. And so,
And that goes for any kind of work business because if you're in a role that is supervised, say for example, and this is a good example, you got a supervisor who's so set in his ways, for example, someone comes in, you have to adapt to that person, and it feels like sometimes that person can't adapt to that you because you are so different because they're so set in their way. But it's about adaptability, and it's that adaptability I think will outgrowth in a person with another person. You can't force it because I always learned this the hard way in life. You go around saying, I am David, I'm wearing this badge. Why are you wearing a badge saying I'm David? Why can't you just go around doing things quietly to say, I'm getting on with it, recognize me as you see?
right. It's a cultural thing. I think it's cultural coming from, and you came from you said you moved from the UK, and
Yeah,
in a lot of terms it would be considered Western individualistic, but probably more collectivist than the US, in some sense. And so people, the whole idea of modesty and humility is probably um a part of that culture. I can't really say, but it sounds like that's what you're expressing. And so, but here in the US, you have to be able to, as they say, toot your own horn, say what your contribution is, make sure the people who needs to know your contribution, or else you're going to be left behind. That was quite a transition for me. And so a lot of times your work, when you just quietly do your work here in the US, it doesn't always speak for you. And in fact, if you don't take the initiative to say what your contribution is, sometimes it can be misrepresented by others who, for whatever reason, whether it's nefarious reasons, so they could get the role, or whatever reason. So a lot of times, if you leave the narrative up to other people, they tend to not represent you well. So you have to be able to take control of that narrative about you, who you are, or what your contribution is. This is just the capitalistic marketplace. And at times it has been such a journey for me learning to toot my own horn. Even now, it's like I cringe in my body, like putting myself out there. Because the way we were raised, it's about being a modest, being humble, let your work speak for itself. You don't just go about just kind of being showy and boasting, for people in collectivist cultures, they see that as being boastful. They don't like that, right?
Mm,
They don't want any one person to be shining brighter than the rest of the group. And they have this thing called tall poppy syndrome in certain cultures where the person who's sticking out too uh taller than the rest of the group, sometimes the head gets cut off, right? So
exactly.
you have you have
It's just the example I'll give, I'm not saying this in any derogatory way. It's the fact that, you do things your own way. You do things in such a way, sometimes it gets misinterpreted. And then as a consequence, that misinterpretation then gets you into the boundary line of, I can't work with you because you're, in this case, for example, you're difficult to work with. You're not understanding what I want. And they want 95%, but they don't fully show you that 95%. They just expect you to go in, be fine. Yes, fine. I get the point of training, but that training is not always automatically available. And then you have to go in blind. And it then feels like when you do talk to that supervisor should show some compassion and not single you out for simple mistakes.
right. Well, unfortunately, that's it. Part of the American marketplace. A lot of people expect you to hit the ground running, as they say. They want you to come ultra prepared. They want you to come knowing the job. And on-the-job training is important. It's necessary, and it takes time for you to get to know your boss, the expectations of the job, what's the requirements of the job, how you communicate back and forth, and things like that, whether you're managing up or they're managing you. It takes time for that. Someone gave me an advice a few years back, and they say whenever you go into any job, always take about 6 months to learn. Don't go in making immediate changes because perhaps the system that they have working for everybody who is there is working just fine. So you don't want to just run in and start making changes and taking charge and running people over. Take some time to learn and observe and to learn and listen from the folks who've been there before you, and then maybe later on you can tweak and make suggestions and work with them to see what changes you can do to improve.
Mm,
But at times it seems like counterproductive at times to see how some people just come in the door on day one and they're ready to just steamroll everything and just change everything, despite what people who were there before them might think. So it's a difference in operation. There's a book out there called Working with Americans, and it gives a lot of details about, speaking with brevity and getting to the point, and the type of like people in the West really just they want you to get to the point. They want you to just focus on what is needed. But a lot of times it does take on the job training for you to learn your job. And yeah, that's another story that could take quite some time delving
yeah,
into that
but
about the American workplace and
but
and
but
how it's different from other countries.
yeah, but it's like immigration when you was young, so it wasn't really majorly applicable for you when you came to America. But when I came to America in 2018, that was a challenge. It felt like a job interview in its own right mind because I had to prove my worth to show that I was worthy in coming to America. Now, fine, on the green card I had, it was because of, I was technically at the time married. And I don't wish any ill health on her if she ever does listen to this. So I'm not begrudging her, but I just felt like I want to do things on my own merit. And yes, it then goes into that category, like I said earlier, about me wearing that badge. I had to wear that badge for immigration to see that I was a viable person. And I
Oh,
just,
you cut out there for a minute. You had to
yeah,
wear that badge for
for
immigration to
immigration
see.
to see that I was worth something to be coming into America for.
Right.
And it wasn't, I'm not saying it's for everyone, but some situations you've got to go to the immigration. They will say, okay, we like what you've done, we like what you said, but you've got to see a psychiatrist. So if you do something that they think is worthy of your mental health at risk, they will refer you to a psychiatrist. I had to see a psychiatrist. I had to prove to that psychiatrist I was a healthy, sound mind person.
Oh, you're talking about the medical before you actually
Yeah.
arrive.
Mm.
Yeah, well, yeah, a lot of people go through that. I was very young, so
And
I
that's
don't
what
even
and that's what I'm saying.
remember.
You was young, so
I
that's
don't
the
even know
difference.
if I went. I don't even know if I went because I was so young. I think maybe my dad went and other people in the group of us, but I was probably too young. I don't remember. We
But
probably did blood tests and things like
the
that.
medical, that's fine. That's the normal. It's just when they refer you to see a psychiatrist and you already spent like, in my case, I already spent like £250 just to get to London the first time to get pay for the, and then they say, you got to pay, pay for now and see a psychiatrist." It's like it leaves you short before you get there. Luckily, I had the money, but the fact was it was stressful. But at the same time,
Oh yeah, it can be.
and that's what, going back to talking about immigration as a whole looks easy, but there is a lot of stress. A lot of stress that can be prevented, but the mindset is being successful in knowing the key elements. It's like I said with a job, you got to know in yourself to be confident, to push yourself.
Right, right. It is a stressful process for a lot of people. And if you consider some cases, it can be even more stressful than that. I've heard of people where they've come into the US, for example, on an H-1B. And for some countries, I'm thinking of India, where there's so many people in line to get an H-1B, such a flood of people coming over. One gentleman told me it took him over 20 years to get his green card. And there are people who've been in the US for decades and they're still waiting. And so, can you imagine being in limbo like that?
Mm,
And I don't even know how they settle down, have families, and have children and things like that when you're just, you know, somebody else has the control over whether you stay or leave here. So, but it's interesting. I hear somebody say that immigration or being able to do international travel is a privilege, it's not a right. And so you have to be able to afford the cost associated with going through the immigration process, all of the costs associated with uh buying your ticket and being able to afford to find a place and have somewhere to live when you move abroad. So there's a lot of costs associated with moving from one country to the next. It's, people who are, as they say, dirt poor or like in certain, just from hand to mouth, probably will never be able to do that, right?
mm.
So you are fortunate to be able to have some sort of resources to be able to even get in that process. So that was a privilege for
And
you,
it
right?
took a year for me to go through that process of immigration. But I know
Oh,
others
yeah.
can, and it's just when you go on, and it goes back to the online situation. It's about going online, going on that website and seeing if there's any change in your circumstance to say any way forward. And you can't ring anyone to say what's happening because they like come back to the website, go there. It's like, okay.
I know. Yeah, it is a process. Unfortunately, we have to work through the bureaucracy, work through the system. Our family had to come through it. I was much younger, but I know better now and I have more compassion and can empathize with people who are coming today. And I'm now aware of a lot of the challenges of people who um, find themselves in different levels of the immigration process, like being out of
Mm.
status, entering the country illegally, living in the shadows in places and they don't have papers legally. So believe me, um, it gets even worse.
So
It
say
gets even worse for some
so
people.
so in the segue going into your book, is this what your book is about?
So my book is it's about it's called Decoding America, right?
Mm,
So
yeah.
it's about my journey decoding the United States and life here after being born and raised, part of my life in one country, and just going through so much pain of trying to figure out like what is this culture? What is the American culture? There's so many influences of international cultures in the in American culture itself. And so defining what is American, what is American, how do we fit in that? How do people view me? This mocha girl, like what does somebody of my skin tone, what sort of social attributes racially do people attribute to me, learning about racism for the first time. So it's about my journey, actually learning for the first time so many things and trying to figure out the American workplace and how to navigate it. And some of my struggles, some of the pitfalls that I fell in,
Mm,
and also some of the successes and advice from other immigrants who've done it successfully. So my but my inspiration for people that it is important and possible for you to understand how to thrive, not just but to thrive in the United States and to find your place as a third culture person and to come home in embracing your birth, your roots, your heritage, part of who you are that you can't throw away. It just is what it is. You were raised in a certain environment. It's a part of who you are. So then you integrate the new country, the culture of the new country, and you decide what pieces of the old culture you keep and what pieces of the new culture that you want to now integrate into this person. You don't have to keep all of it. In fact, you want if you want to throw it all out, you can do that and start all over. Some people completely assimilate and just basically forget life before and they start new. Other people integrate the old and the new and they come up with something completely new,
yeah.
and we call these people third culture people.
Mm,
So in short, that's what it is. I'm encouraging people to embrace their superpower because I really think it's a superpower. You hear people talking about throwing around this word superpower all the time. And I ask myself the question, what is my superpower? And then I came across this lady, uh, Daniel Leslie from Course from Scratch, and she, for the first time, talked to me about or mentioned the whole idea about your culture ad. What is that thing that your own life experience bring to the table? What value do you already bring to the table? You don't need to go get another degree. You don't need to go get a PhD or another certification. What is it in your life and lessons that you've learned that you can add value to people? And so that's when I started researching and asking the question, and I realized, oh my goodness, this whole immigrant experience journey is so rich and it's in fact a superpower. You can be that bridge between your old culture, your new culture, and multiple other cultures. And for people who are born in one or the other, oftentimes they don't necessarily have that perspective, but you can see so much more than a lot of other people. And so I encourage people, embrace who you are, come home to yourself. It's a superpower. Use it to your advantage.
and that book is on Amazon, I assume.
Yes, it's available worldwide, everywhere books are sold online. So you can find it in the UK, Australia, all the other countries. It's on Barnes and Noble, Amazon, and many other places.
Mm, that's good. And I'm just trying to figure out. It just says, the book is for obviously immigrants because it's one of the questions you did write in your press kit is about, you know, is it mainly for immigrants or is it for anyone to read? Because potentially how I look at it, it is an open-minded book that anyone can read and follow a journey because it is about that journey.
Yeah, it's not just for immigrants. It's for my target audience, if you may. Our recommended audience. It's for people who are living overseas and are considering moving to the US, UK, Canada, or any other country. and they're thinking about what is life like abroad? What sort of experiences am I going to have? How do I myself? What decisions do I need to consider before I leave my safe space
Mm.
and
And
go put myself in a whole new country? So it's for those people, aspiring immigrants. And then it's for first generation immigrants who are new to the US and trying to figure out what is life like in the West? What are these pitfalls that I could get myself into?
yeah,
And how do I educate myself? How do I prepare myself to be prepared when I walk in the door? And for people, regular Americans, people in the they can't relate to what it's like leaving your birth country and now living in a whole new culture and country. So it's for those people to educate them. And then it's also for people who are either employers, policymakers, or people who are in positions of power, who may have friends working for them, people who are refugees, expats working for them, to be able to relate to their audience, to people who are working for them or people who are collaborating with them, to recognize that people are often going through a lot of struggles, a lot of adjustment challenges, is what I call them, that are they might not be talking about because a lot of people in this group are not very vocal about their own personal experiences. In fact, they will hide them. And so it's to educate people. If you have people on your team or from other places and you just can't figure out, like, how to read them, this
mm,
book will help you understand some of the struggles that they might be able to go um, have conversations, to build rapport, to build bridges with other people. So it's not just for immigrants, it's for a wide array of people, for people who are just curious about what it's like moving from one place to the other and what are the challenges that you might go through.
okay. And I'll make sure the link for the book is on the description, as well as your. Have you got a website?
I do. My website is thebridgeconcepts.org. And as well, we have our podcast called The Immigrant Experience in America. We have about 180 episodes. People can find us on Spotify, everywhere podcast episodes are found. We have a YouTube channel. We're on TikTok. I'm usually on LinkedIn. But mostly you can hear all of our audio episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Alexa, and all the other places. We have listeners in more than 50 countries, and it's probably up to about 100. Our first year, we hit over 50 countries. So, um, you can find us everywhere you get your podcasts downloads.
And I'll make sure the links, like I said, are in the description afterwards. Now, the last ultimate question I like to end on: words of inspiration to help others in their journey. What would you say to someone new in their journey to help them develop themselves?
Hmm. So we're speaking directly to people who've left one country and are now in another country. You may classify yourself in several of different labels. You could be a refugee, you could be an immigrant, an international professional, an international student, you could be an expat. There's so many different terms that people can use, but we're talking to people who have ventured and have left their home or even thinking about doing that same journey. There we know that it can be hard, and we know that at times once you are in that journey, you lose parts of yourself, a loss of cultural self. Sometimes you don't quite fit in, you're experiencing cultural homelessness, you no longer fit into the birth country or your adopted country. And so we understand that you find yourself in like this in-between world. And so that's where our support comes. That's where our community come in. That's where our coaching and our course comes in. That's where our podcast and the book comes in, is to really provide you that support. And so don't stay isolated. Don't stay in the shadows. There are people out there who have done the research. I've personally done the research, the coaching, personal coaching myself, and have now found the words to explain what I was going through, because for the longest time, I just could not understand why I didn't feel like myself anymore. I wasn't quite, finding my place or finding my group of
Mm,
belonging, my sense of belonging that I had when I was enveloped or in this bubble with my aunts and uncles and grandparents and cousins and neighbors and everybody around me. I just couldn't find that. And so if you're someone who find yourself in between, connect with us and don't stay isolated. There is help for you. And don't give up. We know that culture shock, the symptoms of culture shock could be from mild depression all the way up to people themselves. So if you find yourself just not feeling like yourself, connect with us, connect with other people and try asking questions to see how you can begin the journey of unraveling what you're going through. Seek a coach, seek a therapist, some sort of mental health support, or even finding a local community, whether it's a church or some other social group. Find other people who can support you, because when you were born in a community and now you're in maybe a Western country where all of a sudden you're isolated, you no longer have that community that you had before, it's important for you to reach out and connect with people. And so we're here, we're developing the system to help other people thrive in the in-between world. And so stay encouraged, my friends, wherever around the world that you find yourself. Reach out to us if we can be of any help to you. And stay encouraged. You will get through this and you will become clearer. All the fogginess of trying to figure out like why you don't feel like yourself anymore. Culture shock is serious. It's no
Mm.
joke. So
I,
let us be of help to you or reach out to others around you.
I agree to that. And on that, I'd just like to say, Simone, it's been a pleasure talking to you about your journey today. I hope it does help many others, not just me, but and many others around the world, wherever they are watching or listening.
Thank you so much, David. It's been such a pleasure joining you here on the Journey podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for having this space for us. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
you.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Amy Harrison. I just published another book, and this is the first hard copy I've released. Let's claw right into a sneak peek. Hi, I'm my Galaxy Brat. Error. It is becoming clearer. Y'all probably think I'm annoying. Turns out they all just plain boring. I'm just being me, the realest version. Sweet on the inside, tell like it is on the outside. Yes, I embrace love, never hate. But honesty flies in my mouth like a dove. Be careful before it's too late. If you want to read more, visit the link in the description. Meow at you later.
Parsons. The narrator is Kate Barton. Director and producer, Darren Street. Tim Parsons would like to thank family and friends for their support with the paramedic Chris venture. The series is dedicated to the memory of his father, Reverend David Parsons. Copyright Tim Parsons 2020, all rights reserved. Unauthorized use, copying or sharing of this audiobook is strictly prohibited. This has been a Voice Reel studio production for Tim Parsons.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. I've just been listening to the Paramedic Chris children's books on audio again, and I just love it because they've given a tribute in one of them to my dad as well, who passed away a few years ago. I love audio books, and it's great to walk around, and it's great to sit at the computer, if you're out jogging or wherever, to listen to them as well. All 4 of the Paramedic Chris children's books are available on audio book from Amazon. Go and take a listen to them. You won't be disappointed. You'll hear what happens when a community pulls together and supports one another. The best thing is to pop over to my website, paramedicchriskidsbooks.org, and you'll see the links on the shop page. Keep safe, everyone, and thank you for being you.
The Journey podcast explores stories of personal growth, challenges, and life-changing moments. Each episode dives into unique experiences, offering insights and inspiration for listeners navigating their own paths. I believe everyone has a story worth sharing. If you'd like to share your journey with David and others, email your story to wisewords1983@reborn.com, and it may be featured in a future episode.